Welcome to the 8-Minute Devotion with Pastor Cameron Walcott. The 8-Minute Devotion is a daily message that exists to give you hope, encouragement, and life as we look together at the Word of God. And now, the 8-Minute Devotion.
Hello friends, and welcome back to the 8-Minute Devotion. So glad to have you listening today as we continue to look at the healer. Jesus is the healer, and we're looking at stories from the Gospels that show us how Jesus heals, and we're looking at the relevance of that for us today, that God is still a God who wants to heal. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and if he was a healer 2,000 years ago when he was on earth, he still desires to heal today. He is still a healer today, and he wants to bring physical healing to his people. So yesterday we started looking at the story of the centurion and his servant, and we looked at how the centurion, he came to Jesus and asked for healing. He humbled himself. This man of power and authority went to Jesus, who at the time, of course, he is the Son of God, but most of the people didn't know it, didn't receive it. To the centurion, he could have easily said, well, Jesus is just a Jewish teacher. We're the Romans. We're above the Jews. We're superior. But he didn't say that. He humbled himself. He went to Jesus. He asked for healing. Jesus said, I will come and heal your servant. But the centurion had audacious faith. He had this amazing faith and said, look, you do not even need to step into my house. Just speak the word, and my servant will be healed. Just speak the word, and I know, just like I tell a servant, go and he goes, come and he comes, I know if you speak the word, your servant is healed, he will be healed because you have authority over sickness, disease, you have authority. So what does Jesus do when he hears the centurion's words? This is where we pick up the story today. Matthew 8 and verse 10, it says this, Jesus is speaking, when Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who followed him, truly I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. Jesus makes this remarkable statement, and he says, Jesus is amazed at the centurion's faith. Jesus marvels that the centurion has such audacious faith. And then he makes the statement and says, look, I have not found such faith in all of Israel, in the whole nation of Israel. In other words, what Jesus is saying is those who should have had the most faith didn't have the faith. Those who should have had faith because they were God's chosen people. They were the people who had the prophets. They were the people who in their history, they'd seen the miracles of Elijah and Elisha. Those who God had delivered. He had brought them out of slavery in Egypt. He had given them miraculous victory after miraculous victory. He'd given them David and Solomon and all the kings. He'd given them Isaiah and Jeremiah and all the prophets. Those who had received so much, generations later, they did not have faith. But this Roman centurion, who was not from the line of the people of God, who was a Gentile, who was outside of the covenant, who did not know the word of God, who did not know all the stories of God's power, who had not been there, who was not part of the line of Israel, to have this amazing heritage of miracles and teaching. This centurion is the one who had faith. The ones who should have had the most faith didn't have it. The ones who weren't expected to have faith, they did have it. And you know what I want us to see today as we look at this story? I don't want us to go and condemn the nation of Israel. That wouldn't be the right attitude. To point fingers at them and say, oh, how foolish they were. That doesn't do us any good. What we need to do is say, Lord, let this never be my story. Lord, help me to never be like the people in this story, like the Israelites, those who should have known the truth, who should have believed for the miracle. They didn't have the faith. You know, those of us who go to church week after week and we hear the word of God, those of us who have been born again, who have received the transforming work of Jesus in our lives, those of us who have seen him deliver us from sin and deliver us from sickness and have done and he has done miracles in our lives. And we have heard the teaching. We have heard of all the miracles. Maybe, you know, those of you listening, you even listen to podcasts about the word of God. Me preaching, I preach and I travel and I preach and I record the podcast. May it never be said about any of us that we didn't believe, that we heard so much, we knew so much, we had so much experience, and yet when it really mattered, we did not believe. We did not believe in our moment when we should have taken up the mantle and believe. May this never be our story, that we go to church, that we hear preaching, that we listen to podcasts, that we see what God has done, and we don't have the faith. May it never be said that those outside the church had more faith than us, than those outside in the world, than those that don't hear the messages, and they don't listen to the podcast, and they don't go to church, and they haven't been redeemed in such extraordinary ways as us, but yet they believe sometimes more than we do. May that not be said about us, but may we say, God, give us childlike faith, that we never grow jaded about your miracles, that we never forget all that you have already done in our lives. And God, all the miracles of healing you've already done in my life. Maybe God has healed you in the past and he's done miracles for you and he's saved you, but yet you have a big sickness today. You have a big problem today, and you find it so hard to believe God again, because you've forgotten everything he has done in the past. Don't let that be said of you. I don't want that to be said about me, but I want to continue in childlike faith, that I believe everything God has spoken, he is still going to do. He is still more than able. He is able to bring the miracles that he has spoken. I want to have faith like that of the centurion. Just because I'm in the church, I'm in the covenant people of God, I don't want to start to grow jaded and lose my faith. What does Jesus end up doing? He marvels at the centurion's faith, and then what does he say? Matthew 8 and verse 13. And to the centurion, Jesus said, "Go, let it be done for you as you have believed." And the servant was healed at that very moment. The servant was healed in the very moment Jesus spoke, "Let it be done as you have believed." His servant stood up. His servant was no longer paralyzed. His servant got out of bed. His servant was healed. You see, there is amazing creative power in the Word of God. His servant was healed at the moment that Jesus spoke. And you know, brothers and sisters, I want to encourage you from this story. Have audacious faith. Have faith like that of the servant. Even before you've started to see the miracle in your life, believe God, he is bringing the healing. Again, when you pray for others, even before you've seen the miracle, even before you've seen the breakthrough, believe, just like the centurion did, that there is power in the Word of God, and believe that when you speak the Word of God, when you speak healing, when you speak creative miracles and creative power, God is going to bring those miracles to pass. God is going to do a new work. So believe, and God is going to do miracles through the power of his word. Just like he did for the centurion, just like he did for his servant, have that faith. Thank you for listening. Today, we'll be back tomorrow with another story of Jesus' healing word on the 8-Minute Devotion.
Thank you for listening to the 8-Minute Devotion. We trust you've been encouraged and blessed today. Please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or by visiting the8minutedevotion.podbean.com. For questions or comments, please email us at the8minutedevotion@gmail.com or visit our Facebook page. We would love to hear from you.